Hello, besties and bosses. How you doing? My apologies that I am a little bit late. I pride myself on always being on time or early, but we lost internet temporarily. I kept thinking it would come back on. I guess I could have gone on my hotspot or cellular on my phone, but I just kept thinking it would come back on, and then it did. Luckily, that doesn't usually happen. I don't think that's ever happened for a client call before, but it feels like it is a reason to take a moment and pause before we dive into today's conversation and also acknowledge all of you who were in the path of the hurricane. And I do want to take a moment because I think that's really important. It's just been on my mind. My husband and I were talking about it last night. It's just absolutely devastating and heartbreaking. I grew up in South Florida and lived through Hurricane Andrew, so I really know and I was in South Florida at the time, how devastating hurricanes can be, but just how scary they can be when you're in it, but also just the devastation it can do. And just seeing the news and saying to my husband, it's such a strange thing when you don't live somewhere where it's the same with, we're seeing with the wars going on. I promise we're going to get to the conversation, but this just feels so important. When we're in our own little bubbles, it's almost easy to forget these things are going on, impacting humans in such big ways. So I just want to take a moment to just check in with everybody. A lot of you probably don't have power, but to check in, see if y'all are doing okay. I will drop a link. I looked up the New York Times. They recommended, if you're from far away and you want to give any sort of support for the Hurricane Helene victims or people who were affected, what they recommended was not to send things like clothing, and instead monetary support is easier to charities because they can help them get what is actually needed into the places that need it most. So I'll see if I can find that article again from the New York Times. They listed a link where you can find the charities that are actually using your donation dollars in a way that they're making the most of their dollars, because obviously charities are not created equal. So I'll drop a link for that if that's something you feel called to. I know the Red Cross is one that they vouch for. It's one I personally donate through. So again, won't tell anybody what to do, but if that is something you are looking for as a way to be able to offer some support, I'll make sure we link that afterwards. Okay, so all of the things, let's pull up this conversation. This feels like such a big conversation. And I'm actually surprised we haven't had it sooner. I think we have a giveaway. Do I have a giveaway today? We didn't pick a giveaway today. Well, if you're live, I know I was on late, so I might have lost a couple of you live, but if you're on live and leave a comment, you can pick anything from my resource library aside from my one-on-one coaching. We'll do that as a giveaway today. And because we usually do have a giveaway, because I want to thank you for being here. All right, let's talk. This conversation feels like such an important one. I feel like we've probably had snippets of it before, and I did a snippet on Instagram and stories, but it is one I really hope that you'll tune in for. And I feel like this is important for you, even if you're already making 10K months or more, but this is why aren't more coaches making 8 to 10K months? And really, why aren't more business owners making 8 to 10K months? And I'm going to preface this and adjust my camera there by saying one of the first things I really want to be clear on is none of this conversation has anything to do with because you're not good enough, because you're not talented enough, because your offer sucks, because your vibe isn't high enough. I just don't see that to be the case at all. I really want to have some practical conversation around this. This also isn't at all a conversation to say it's hard and not possible for you to make 8 to 10K months or more. What I really hope you walk away from this conversation with is first understanding if you want to make 10K months or more, that is a very realistic business goal and very possible for you. This is, I have a post, I think we're reposting it next week. I've seen people talk about in Facebook groups what lies it is when people talk about making 10K months and how people are lying or they're not taking home any money and how it's just impossible and it's all bullshit. And I really want to be a voice for how not true that is, and I think how damaging and toxic that can be for people who are going after those goals. It's also not a bad or wrong goal if you want to make 10K months or more. I really want to be evidence for how realistic a goal this is and how possible this is for most service providers. I don't even think this is like for the elite few who are making 100K per month or more. I really think this is a realistic goal for most service providers, especially if you have a higher ticket offer, an offer that sets you up for this amount of money. I won't go into today's conversation. We have a masterclass coming up where I'll teach more on that. I'm not going to give the how so much of that, but I really do want you to see that is possible. And none of this conversation is about anything anyone is doing wrong. I really want to help break down and normalize why this is such a challenging phase in business and help understand what some of the hurdles are that I think we don't always talk about in the online space that make it more challenging for coaches or business owners to reach this, which I think is, again, a very realistic and doable goal for most business owners, which is that 8 to 10K mark. A little preface of where this comes from, because I don't feel like I usually frame conversations this way. A couple of months ago, might have actually been half a year ago, someone that I respect in this space, who's another coach, posted in another Facebook group, like one of those like thread the I don't know, what do you call it? Like when you just put a question in the group and everybody puts the threads underneath. And it was, why do you think more coaches aren't making 8 to 10K months? And everybody chimed in with their stuff. And I don't usually chime in on those things. It just doesn't even matter why. I just usually don't interject in those sorts of conversations. But I was reading through some of the comments, because those are usually a gold mine for content insights and just to see kind of what the mindset of our space is and where people are at. I do think it can be great market research. And I was just reading through some of the responses, and not to throw shade or to say that people are wrong, but a lot of the responses, I was like, that's just not it at all. That's really misleading. That's really confusing. That's, I think, unintentionally a little bit harmful to say that it's just as simple as someone doesn't have enough confidence, or their offer isn't good enough, or that it's just all mindset. And this is coming from a mindset coach. I do believe like 80% of business is mindset, but that's really just that you can have the best confidence in the world and you can have the best offer in the world and still be struggling to make 8 to 10K months. Like that's just not the whole picture. And I'm not saying anybody there was wrong. I get also we just like put in our one answer usually, and a lot of times people put in one response because it's whatever they're selling. But I actually chimed in and left a response there. And so today's conversation is based on that response, but I also want to dig a little bit more into the mindset and why believing your offer isn't enough. Why it's also like that isn't the thing. I want to talk about the real reason it's hard to make your first 10K cash month. And I want to talk about what I coach my clients to understand about business that helps them go from struggling to book clients to make 10K months and above. And I just, for some context here as to why I believe you can make 10K months, why I believe this isn't impossible, but why I think this conversation is important, why I feel like I'm qualified to talk about it. I have a relatively small business where I work with 20 to 25 one-on-one clients at any given time. Most of my clients renew and work with me for a minimum of a year, if clients have worked with me for 4 or 5 years, meaning there's not a lot of turnover. In that small roster, I've had 30 clients, possibly more, because I don't necessarily always like just keep track of this, but at least 30 clients to date make 10K months. I've had at least 16 clients make their first 6-figure year. Many of those clients have gone on to make 20K months, 30K months. I've had a few go on to make 50, 76K, 115K cash months, and I've had many clients go on to make multi 6 figures and to go from early stages of business to $1 million plus. But 30 clients of that small roster with little turnover, which is a very high percentage of my roster, have gone on to make 10K a month. And so I'm saying this from a place of not just like, this is what I think, or I'm saying this just because this is a fun thing to sell, or because like I want to hear myself talk about this, or like I want to be like, all mindset or all that, or like whatever the thing is. I'm saying this from actually being in the trenches with clients and seeing what is true, what goes into making 8 to 10K months. If we were to say helping clients to 8 to 10K months, it's probably closer to 40 at this point, if not more. So the point here is I actually have a lens and a perspective. I've personally made, I think, 63 or 64 consecutive 10K to 40K cash months. Currently, I'm closer to 25, 30 to 40K cash months, and that's been for the last 2.5, 3 years. So I'm not talking out my behind is what I want to say here. And so the first thing I want to say to anybody who's like, yeah, why aren't more people making this kind of money, is, again, it is not because it's impossible, and it is not because people are lying when they say they're making 10K months. It is not because that's a goal you shouldn't have. It's not because it's greedy. It's not because it's a pyramid scheme in the online space. Whatever the noise is there, this is like the simplest way I can put it is, I think honestly, for as easy, in air quotes, as it is practically to make consistent 8 to 10K cash months, and I do think practically speaking, it is very simple in terms of what goes into making that consistent revenue. I think it is also the hardest, if not one of the hardest, phases of business. And I'm not saying this to freak anybody out. I'm saying this to normalize it, because I think sometimes we gaslight ourselves in business, or one another in the online space, or marketing can gaslight you. And I think it can make you feel so craptastic. And I think it has a lot of really talented coaches, business owners who are on the path, literally on the path to that pop moment and that first 10K month, or that first 8K month and their first 6-figure year. And because of this messaging, think they're doing something wrong and quit, or do something completely different. And so I really do think it is, again, if I would say it's one of the hardest phases. I would say the next hardest phase is then doubling that to go past 250K marks, the 250K mark in your business, which is another conversation. I have a whole masterclass around that, but getting to your first 8 to 10K month, it is simple. It is in air quotes easy. After you make that, you will look back and be like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. Getting there, I think, again, is just one of the most challenging phases in business. And here's the reason why. There are so many learning curves, so many new business skills, so many things that have to be put into place, executed on, optimized, right, refined, that you have to implement and master that are outside of your skill set of whatever it is you're delivering as a coach or a business owner. I think what a lot of us forget as coaches, and I coach a lot of coaches, therapists, I have some lawyers, basically all service providers, right? We all have what our actual business is. If you watch Shark Tank, I think this is so fascinating in Shark Tank. It's sort of like everybody who comes into Shark Tank, into the tank, they have what their actual product is, right? And their product can be the most amazing, most innovative, 45 patents product. And that does not matter at all. A shark is not going to bite unless they also have the business around it, right? Mr. Wonderful is always like, yeah, but what are your sales? Unless they know how to position that, market that, brand that offer, they have an audience to sell to. They have proof of concept. They don't have a ton of returns. They have marketing working. They have a low cost per lead. They have sales, right? They don't have a ton of returns. They have a profit margin. There are all these components that have nothing to do with, it doesn't matter how great they are, how talented they are, how innovative they are, how brilliant their product they are. If they don't have all of those other pieces, right? Unless if they just like hit one of those shark's soft spots, a shark isn't going to bite. And it's sort of the same thing here. As coaches, as business owners, and look, I will raise my hand. I think this was one of my challenges the first couple of years in business. It took me, I don't know how long it took me to make my first 8K month. But it took me oh my gosh, I've written content on this and my brain is just losing the internet, like actually messed with my brain a little bit, y'all. I think it took me 3.5 years to make my first 6 figures. Maybe it was 2.5 years to make my first 10K month, I think. So it probably took me about 2 years to make my first 8K month. Let's just call it that. Don't quote me if I'm off by a month or two. I like to be in integrity and honest here, but about that. There were lots of factors for that. A lot of it was mindset trash, right? And a lot of it was twofold. One, I was so focused, as I should have been, on mastering my craft as a coach. I was a new coach. I do actually think that is really important, right? As a therapist, as a coach, if you're a lawyer, at anything here, like I do actually think if we're going to put a dollar next to what we offer, it is quite important to be able to do what we say we can do and to have expertise and to have what's the word I'm looking for? Not integrity, proof of concept, and to be able to deliver on what we say we will. And so, to be very honest, part of that was I was a newer coach. And so, yes, I was naturally gifted at coaching, but especially for business coaching, I needed proof of concept. Yes, I helped one client make $1 million or get to $1 million that first year in business, but that was like one client out of many. Like I needed to put in my time, then my rep. And I told one of my clients this the other day. I don't recommend this to everybody, but I did 100 sessions for free. I worked with 3 clients in a full, I think it was a 3-month package for free. And I started by charging, I think it was $100 a session. I think it was $375 per month for my coaching. And that wasn't because like I wasn't owning my worth. That was just because I really wanted to get some testimonials and some proof and some confidence in myself and that really understanding what I was doing. But you have to do the math on that. It's kind of tough to reach an 8 to 10K month if you're charging $375 per month. I would have had to have, I don't know how many clients, but probably like, I don't know, the math wouldn't have mathed very well there. I can't do math in my head right now. So that was part of the reason, but a big part of that was I was also, after I did have proof of concept and I was actually pretty good at what I was doing, my clients were getting a result. I mean, a client going to $1 million, right? Like your first year in business, going from 10K months to 115K cash months. I would say that's proof of concept. Even when I had that proof of concept, what I didn't have, like what I was doing was still focusing most of my energy on mastering my craft. And then I wasn't spending as much energy on mastering the business side of things, but I was also really in the learning curve of the business side of things. I could coach other people in business, right? It's, I think, a lot easier to spot the holes in someone else's business, especially when you're looking at it holistically. But things like messaging, things like online marketing, for me, it was a lot of being able to show up and own my work and sell. Like these were all things I had huge learning curves around. And so, yes, they were simple, right? Like the things I needed to do were pretty simple, but to actually dedicate the time to not just implement them, but to master those as much time as I was focusing on mastering my craft, right? Like that actually took time. And there was actually a lot that went into that. And I think that's just something we just don't want to talk. Like we just want to be so quick to say it's impossible to make 10K months. People making 10K months are lying. Coaches selling that are lying. If you signed up for a course or a program that didn't make you 10K months in 3 seconds, they're lying. And I think the truth is it is both true that it's simple to make 10K months and also hard for the first time, right? It's both easy and hard in that the actual steps are so simple, and understanding that it's not just about focusing on your skill set and your craft of your offer. Now you've got a second job of learning how to implement a simple strategy that actually works, that is holistic, right? This is what I coach my clients around. That's why 30 plus clients have made 10K months with mine, because we focus so much on not just their mindset, not just feeling good about their work, but also really having a simple strategy. But it's not just enough to have a simple strategy, and it's not just enough to have the mindset that it's like, I'm awesome at what I do, let me implement on this simple strategy. Then it's about the learning curve in that simple strategy and actually mastering that and looking at the data and being able to refine it and get it to work. And I think this is, again, I think it's just challenging. And I think this is where a lot of people make themselves wrong, think they're not cut out for business. Or instead of saying, oh, it's because I just haven't mastered marketing yet. Oh, it's because I don't literally have enough people in my audience where the math isn't math, the numbers don't make sense. Or I just haven't gotten comfortable. I haven't learned sales yet. That's a skill set. Instead of seeing that, I was like, I maybe just need to hire Kim as a coach. Hire me. Like I will just say, you should hire me. I'm good at this. Or I should get a course on this, right? I should hire someone, get into a space that's going to help me learn these things. Instead, what I find most people do is they don't even make it about, I'm not great at sales, this is something I need to learn, this is something I need to implement. They make it about, I must suck as a business owner. I must suck as a coach. I must suck as a therapist. I must suck as an OBM. I must suck as a designer. It's because I suck at what I do. And so what most of us do is we then go back to reinforce, like making our offer, our skill set of what we actually do better. And I'm not saying that isn't important. I continue to invest in programs of learning and education and my own coaching to deepen my mastery as a coach. That is always going to be the core of what makes my business run. If we go back to the Shark Tank example, right? All what we just talked about is true, in that you can have the best product in the entire world, and if you don't have any of the business pieces, a shark probably isn't going to invest. But you can have, I just watched someone come in super cocky. They had like an audience of like 8 gazillion people, and they're like, we can crush it. But their offer, their product kind of so-so. They didn't have any proof of concept, right? They were too confident on the marketing side, and they didn't have the offer side. Like, you actually do need both. So don't hear any of this to say that isn't important. But I just see, and y'all can feel free to chime in here if this feels true for you. I just see how quick we are to jump from, I'm not getting the results I want, this feels challenging and hard, it means there's something wrong with me. It means there's something wrong with my offer. It means I'm not cut out to be a business owner. It means I can't have what I want. It means that I suck as a coach. It means that I suck as a therapist. It means, right, we tend to really internalize this. At least I see for a lot of my clients, and I know that's what I used to do. And then what I find to be true for most of you, you're good at what you do. It's not that we can't, we're always growing, evolving, deepening our craft. Again, I'm not saying that isn't part of it, but we go on and we work on the very thing that doesn't need to be worked on. We solve the wrong problem. And then we dig ourselves a bigger hole, and we get really frustrated when it's like, well, it just reinforces what you think to be true. When you go and take another certification to be a better whatever it is you do, when you go and deepen your craft and like you go to try to get better at that or make yourself better, right? I think business is 80% mindset. What we're talking about here is mindset. So if you are a client of mine, if you hire me as your coach, don't hire me if you don't like mindset. Like, I'm going to challenge you on the mindset things and how to think like a CEO. But what we do is we think that means there's something wrong with me. I need to fix me. I need to be more high vibe. My mindset isn't in the right place. And so we go and work on all of those things. And then we're still not making 8 to 10K months. And we're like, well, fuck, that just proves my mindset isn't in a good place. I'm really not good enough. My offer is really not good enough. I'm really not cut out for a business owner. When the truth is, no, that it's not to say there wasn't an opportunity and some mindset stuff there. It's not to say there isn't always an opportunity to refine our offers and our delivery and our work, but that wasn't solving the right problem. And the truth is, what's really challenging, especially in today's current climate with business, it is very doable. It is a very simple path, but there is this whole side of business that needs to be implemented and that needs to be learned and mastered. You don't have to be perfect at it by any means. But most of us, if we're coming into this space, most of us didn't come into this space because we were excellent marketers. Most of us didn't come into this space and open up our own businesses because we were like excellent salespeople. Even if you're naturally good at sales, I think I'm someone who is naturally good at sales, but it's not like that's why I started my business. I started my business because I love coaching. I love serving people. I love helping people. I love watching that transformation. I bet for most of you, right? You started your business because you are so passionate about your work and or you really care about having a lifestyle with your work, right, that really supports you. You want to have that freedom. You want to be outside of, maybe a toxic workspace or a space where there was a income ceiling for someone like you, right? There are all these other factors that have nothing to do with, oh, I started a business because I just like crush reels and growing an audience and selling online. Right? That's just not the case for most of us, which means, again, there's just learning curves there. So even if you get the strategy handed to you in a consultation or by a coach or in a course, having something handed to you is very different than mastering it. This is, I know I'm like, Kate says, ooh, yes, I've cried so many times because I truly believe that I wasn't cut out for this. Bless your heart. I think everybody probably has at some point. I just so appreciate you saying that. And it's like, if anyone's cut out for this, you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think what's so fascinating, just because I know you, Kate, if it's okay for me to say this, it's like you're excellent at what you do. But I think one of the traits that makes for a great entrepreneur is someone who's resilient and willing to keep showing up and willing to keep learning and willing to keep implementing. Like, Kate embodies all of that. And it's just so, like, this is just what the brain does. And I think, to be also fair to all of us, it's also, I think, what marketing can do, right? I mean, marketing tells you if you don't have these things, right? You don't have the codes, you don't have the business gene, whatever the bullshit is, right? Like, you're not meant for this. And like, that's just so inherently not true. But I do also think for all of us who are more heart-centered, service-driven, big feeling people who are doing this as much for like the passion of the work and for, the love of service and for like the lifestyle aspect, who didn't just come. I don't think there's anything wrong with people who just like love the game of business. I love the game of business. I think I'm blessed in that I have both sides of this. But I think there are some people, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm just starting a business because I love the game of business. I just like love marketing, sales. I just want to monetize the shit out of this offer I also have to believe in. I think that's just such a different mindset than us who come in from with a very different focus, I would say, and who usually generally do have a bit more of that learning curve on the business side of things. And so I want to normalize that, because that is just challenging, and it's challenging when you're in it. Two things are true that I feel like are important to explain this with. What I was saying earlier is you can take the best program in the world and get the best strategy, and it can be the best strategy for you, but it still takes time to learn and master. I'm not a cook at all. Husband, it's our anniversary today, y'all. My husband does all the cooking for us, and I literally can make protein pancakes and scrambled eggs, and that's about it. If you ever come over to dinner for a house and I invite you, either husband's cooking or I'm ordering out and putting it on plates. Like, that's I'm good at business. I'm not good at cooking. But point being here, I love watching cooking shows. I can watch a cooking show and it can give me the best recipe in the entire fucking world. And if I go into that kitchen tomorrow and I make that best recipe, I can follow it. I'm a smart cookie. I can follow instructions. I know how to bake, right? All of that. I guarantee you it's not going to look like it did on the TV show. And I guarantee you it's probably going to taste mediocre at best. And I'm not discrediting myself. I'm not like trying to be glib. I'm just very aware of my cooking skills. I just missed something there. And I also know that if I put my mind to learning something, I can learn and master anything. So I also believe that if I spent 6 months or a year, right, really learning how to cook and the cooking skills and mastering that recipe, come back to me a little bit down the road and I would knock your socks off with that recipe. I just have zero desire to put in that time and dedication to learn that and to get the feedback and be like, oh, this one didn't taste so good, gotta try it again, right? But that's what getting to your first 8 to 10K month is. But what most of us are doing is we're watching the cooking show, we're getting the cooking recipe, we're trying it once or twice. We've never cooked before, right? Like, never have we cooked before. And we're expecting our food to taste like a Michelin star chef's food on the first try or second try. And then we're so mad at ourselves. So mad at ourselves when we're not just crushing it out of the park after the third or fourth time we've cooked this recipe, or when we like don't know how to like execute some of these more challenging skill sets, and we make it mean something about our inherent ability, but also our, like, we're not meant to be a cook then, right? Or we're not meant to be a chef. especially when the whole reason we started this was maybe because what we're really good at is growing the vegetables. And so then we make it where like, I'm not even good enough to grow vegetables. I'm taking this analogy a little too far, but y'all get what I'm saying here. I think we just have to remember that. And the other thing I think is just so important to remember, and this is, I think, honestly, why the 8 to 10K months, a couple other reasons they're challenging, is what I just said there and what I described there is, and it just takes time to see results. I think the fitness example is a great one of this as well. I'm doing some weight training right now. I've always been a like cardio junkie, and I know it takes, what is it, however many days. I'm doing a 30-day challenge. So let's say 30 days to start to really see results. And I gain muscle pretty quickly because I'm already in decent shape. But kid you not, I know things take time to learn and master. Like, I go to my first weight training class and I'm like, why am I not lifting heavier? And I go home and I'm like, why don't I have six-pack abs, right? We just do these funny things to ourselves. And so I think we have to understand, like, one of the reasons it's actually why more coaches aren't making 8 to 10K months is everything we're talking about here. And there just is, I know I've probably said this so many times, it's just, I'm going to say it again because I just think it's so important at every stage of business. It just takes time to learn and master a skill set. And then on top of that, it takes time to get results. And it takes time from the time you start showing up to learn and master. But then once you've actually mastered, right, and you know what you're doing, from that time point is when you actually start the clock for when you really get to see the result. And so the like general thing in the online space is it takes about 90 days for a strategy to play out. But that's assuming you already mastered your craft. You're already super sold on yourself. You've already got a strategy in place that works. You've already optimized that strategy, right? You've learned how to do that strategy. You've mastered it and you've optimized it, which is a completely different thing than I've now learned how to message and market, but I've now gone into my marketing and looked at the data and I've optimized it. I've optimized my sales process, right? From that, once all of that's in place, then it takes about 90 days to see a strategy play out, right? And we forget all of this. And I think then what happens is for so many business owners, for so many coaches, for so many people, especially, again, the people who are the big hearts, this starts to feel challenging and hard. And because then the online space is yelling at you that you're doing something wrong, because there's threads, like I was just talking about, people are asking why aren't more coaches making 8 to 10K months? And they're like, it's because of your mindset. It's because your offer sucks. It's whatever things, and I'm not making anyone wrong. I get why people are saying that, right? We take this on and we're like, well, see, there's that evidence. And so then we stop the very thing we were starting to get good at, that we were starting to get traction from, right? If I stop cooking that recipe after that first time I make the recipe, I want to read Kate's comments in a moment. If I stop, let's just say it's like after 3 times of making this recipe, but it's like the 6th time was when I was going to nail it. I was actually halfway there. But as soon as I stop and I'm like, I give up, then I've got to take care of myself, get my mindset back in order, decide I could be a chef, right? Find it. And then what do? We find a new recipe. And I've got to start this process all over again. And so I find so many coaches get stuck, and business owners get stuck in this cycle, right? Where they're always making it like halfway through, giving up on themselves, having to dig themselves out of this hole, then have to start that process all over again. And I think that's really more than anything. Kate says, oh, thank you. I'm very determined and constantly learn and grow. I love the way you're normalizing this. She says such a good analogy. It's absolutely true about you, and I also know you're just an excellent coach. So there's also that. I will happily sing your praises. So I think all of that is true, right? And then just to normalize, and this is, again, I do not want anyone to hear that this is hard. 10K, 8 to 10K months, 6-figure years are so possible, but that doesn't mean they're possible overnight, right? I share client stories. I've absolutely had clients make 10K months in 3 months. I've absolutely had clients go to 6 figures in 6 months. I've absolutely had clients replace their corporate salary in 3 months. Clients get faster results than me. I have plenty of clients who make more money than me to this day, right? And I've had plenty of clients, when I say 30 clients made 10K a month, they didn't all do that in 3 months. They didn't all do that in 6 months, right? Some of them, that was after a year. Some of them, that was after I probably a year and a half, right? For all of them, it took different timelines, and I really want you to hear that. And I want you to hear that because the online space just does something, it just wants to yell something different at all of us in every other post. In one post, it's like you should be able, like if you're not getting people sliding into your DMs every single day wanting to hire you, and if you're not making 10K months after like 3 posts, you're doing something wrong. On the next one, it's like, well, I don't want to be on the hook for telling you that. So like, here's all the reasons you shouldn't be able, like 10K months are a lie and a sham, and like, it's so noisy, it's so loud, and it's so confusing. And And so I just want to normalize all of that. That's also why this feels challenging and hard. And so I just want to keep saying, as someone who has actually helped a lot of people get on the path to 10K, 8 to 10K months and make that kind of money, and who has done this myself and who sees this, like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's very possible, but these are the reasons it starts to feel really challenging and hard. I think the other thing here that we honestly just don't talk a lot about, 8 to 10K months is also a lot of effing money. I know we're in a space, I know yes, I'm so grateful and blessed. I make more money than that. I know many of my clients do. I know many of us have bigger goals than that. And I don't know what happened in our space where we started making it seem like there's something wrong if you never make 8 to 10K months, and have forgotten, statistically speaking, what an anomaly it is to make that kind of money as a business owner, right? A little over 8K a month is a 6-figure year. I have so many clients who are making about 6 figures. So I would count them in the 10K months, right? Because they're making 8K months, who make themselves wrong, right? Because it's only 6 figures. It's only 8K months, right? And I think part of the reason for that is we have such a skewed perception of what is real and true in our online space. I didn't pull the stats up for this conversation, but statistically speaking, it is actually a very small percentage of business owners that will ever make, especially coaches, that will ever make 6 figures. I think it's something like most coaches will, at most, will make like 35,000 per year, which, by the way, is more than I used to make at my 9 to 5 when I started my business. I think we see that and we're just like, oh, well, that's horrible and bad. Now, look, I live in New York City. I couldn't live off of 30,000 per year for the life I wanted to have. I'd have multiple jobs, right? So, like, yes, I understand, like, life has gotten expensive. A lot of us have families. A lot of us have things where we want to make more money. I think 6 figures per year, 8 to 10K months for most business owners, that lets you pay yourself a healthy take home so you can take care and have a high quality of life. But I think we sometimes act like this is like, it should be super easy. Everybody deserves this. Everybody should get this. This is what everybody in the online space is doing. And statistically speaking, that is simply not true. An exercise I will often have my clients do is to look up the average salaries of a lot of different businesses. And you'll start to see things like doctors and lawyers working at law firms and people who have to go to school for years and years and years and get a lot of debt, right, are making maybe 6 figures, or making 70,000 a year, or are making 45,000 a year, right? We have just so lost the plot in our online space, I think. And again, I'm here for the big goals. I think both things can be true here, right? Where we can normalize that this is still a lot of money. And so just to normalize, that's also, I think, why more coaches aren't making this much. It's more money than most people have ever made. And if it's more money than you've ever made, or more money than anybody in your business has ever, family has ever made, I think that brings up a whole lot of things around worthiness and deservingness, and if it's possible. If we're also seeing statistically, that's what I want to normalize, that this gets to be normal and that more coaches and more business owners are making this amount of money. And I think the reason it's statistically small in our space, all the things we were just talking about, and the reason so many businesses go out of business in the first couple of years, which is the norm, right, is for a lot of the reasons we're talking about, right? We get so married to the craft and the offer and the product, and not married enough to loving the business side of things and the learning curve there and being in the process and really mastering that. And you absolutely need both. So I want to push that, like, part of my mission is to push that percentage up and to have more of you staying in business for the long game, more of you making sustainable money, more of you making 6 figures. Ideally, I would love to have more of you making 250K per year or more, not because everybody needs to make that much money because you want to be ballers, but honestly, to run a business, we've got to pay teams and health insurance, right? Like, I want you all to have a healthy take home, and that's usually about the amount that sets a lot of you up for the type of business and life you want. All of that is true. Like, two things can be true at the same time. And 8 to 10K per month is still a fuck ton of money. And I think we just forget that sometimes. And so I think part of the reason more coaches aren't making that, more business owners aren't, is that is more than just most people will ever make, which also means it's more than most people have ever made before and understand how to make, or how to hold, or how to sustain, or how to think about. And I think that's just something we just, again, want to normalize, not to say that it isn't possible and we can't push that percentage up, but to see that that might mean there's some stickiness that comes up around charging more. There's some stickiness that comes up around holding more. I remember when I made my first 5K month, how huge that felt at the time. And honestly, I think that was in some ways, like, when I have a big income month now, it doesn't feel the same way because I've just integrated a lot, and I don't even know if I want to say this. I've said this before. I always feel like this sounds fucked up in the way I don't mean it. Once you make a certain amount of money, making more and more money really doesn't change your day to day that much. When I made my first 5K month, that changed things dramatically for me, right? I was not making a lot of my 9 to 5. Like that is when I think that's about when I left my 9 to 5 and I could go full time in my business and I could pay a VA and I wasn't like rolling in it, but like that really did change things for me. It felt really huge, but it also meant a lot of mindset stuff came up for me, a lot of upper limit stuff, a lot of like, is it okay that I'm making this much money? Is it okay that it feels easy? Like just a lot came up, and that wasn't an 8K month. That wasn't a 10K month. That was a 5K month for me when that happened. And so that meant I had to do some work around being able and allowing myself to receive that much money, to continue to receive that much money, to hold that much money for there was just a lot in that. And so anyway, I am amped up today, y'all, because I feel very strongly about this, which meant, so my next month I think was 6 months. Like I had to incrementally go up. Maybe if I had not had kind of how that affect me at 5K, maybe if that hadn't affected me till 20K months, maybe I would have doubled that the next month. But for me, it really meant I needed to go incrementally month by month. And I think if I work, because I did revenue share with my coach, so I can see every month of my revenue. I think it's something like I had my first 5K month, then my first 6, then my first 7. It was like every month I incrementally added $1,000 on, which also has a lot to do with business and marketing, being able to onboard clients and having a one-on-one model. But I say, again, all of this to normalize, there's all these different factors for why more coaches aren't making 8 to 10K months, for why it feels challenging and hard, but also for why it's very possible. It's just, if we don't look at some of these pieces here, right? It's sort of like we're then trying to make a recipe without half of the ingredients, and we're wondering why it tastes like shit. To go back to that recipe example, if I gave you an incomplete recipe, does anybody watch The Great British Bake Off? When they do the blind bakes, this would be like trying to do a blind bake. And it's like, well, the only people who do well at the blind bake, by the way, is like they get a recipe, but like some of the stuff is like X'd out. And so they kind of have to figure out how to make this thing they've never made before without all the full ingredients. And only the people who are really expert bakers or who have already made this thing before make something good. Everybody else makes usually something that looks like dog food and tastes like dog food, or they kind of get halfway there. That's how most of us are treating this goal of 8 to 10K months. We have a blind bake recipe, and then we're like, well, I suck because I couldn't follow this blind bake recipe to perfection, and someone else could. Well, the only reason someone else could is they've made this thing before. They have a lot of experience going in, so it wasn't a blind bake for them. I just think that's so important to remember. The other thing I want to say here is no one in the online, well, some people in the online space are not in integrity and great, but I think for the most part, people in the online space, especially the coaches, I think for the most part, and maybe I live in a bubble, so you all can correct me if I'm wrong. The bubble I live in, coaches and the clients I support, the people in my world that are peers, my coach, the circles I'm in, I actually see everybody who is who they say they are. They, I think, share really valuable content. I think they're coming from a really good place. I don't think anybody is ever saying things to omit all of what we're talking about here on purpose to make it hard for someone. I do think there are people in our online space who are like misleading and absolutely manipulative with their marketing, 1,000%. But I think for if you're in this group, probably the spaces you're in, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do think what is true though is if we talked about this all of the time, no one would ever try to run a business, right? If we were just always like, well, it's actually really hard to make 8 to 10K months. Like this isn't the best sales pitch for me outside of, I hope this is normalizing for people. And I'm really, really, really good at supporting clients with this. And I have a very good track record and I've been doing this for a long time. And so if you want support, and you want support from someone who actually knows how to help you get these results, you should absolutely hire me, and I will drop a link for a free discovery call. And let's be honest, this is not the best sales pitch where I'm just like, it might be challenging. It might kick up your edges. It might be hard. It's not just as simple as meditating and being high vibe all the time. It's not just go study your craft more. It's, it isn't the best sales pitch. And so I think there's a reason a lot of people aren't talking about all of these things, right? Because everybody is in business. If they're marketing, that doesn't make them wrong or bad, right? We all have to actually do our jobs, like the part of business I was talking about, and market our work in a way that is effective. It also wouldn't help most people to ever get started with anything. If when I went to my weight training class, if the coach there, who I really like, was like, Kim, it's going to take you a while to get really strong, get muscles, and this is going to hurt, and you're going to be sore, and you're not going to be able to walk, and like it's going to suck, and you're right, it's going to like suck before it feels good, and then like On month two, you're finally going to be like, oh my gosh, I love this class. Right? Would I have kept going? I don't know. I mean, I might have because I understand the growth process. Would most people? Probably not. Right? And so I think don't, for all of you, like, I don't want you to hear this and to be like, well, everybody is lying or wrong. There's a reason for that. I do think sometimes we do people a service to also show them what's possible and to simplify things and to not talk about how hard things are. And I also want to normalize this to help you see what's possible, but why it might be feeling hard or taking longer than you thought it was supposed to. And so I just think both things can be true there. And one other thought I want to share here. What was I going to say about this? Maybe it wasn't important. I feel like there was one other piece there. This was about the online space and marketing. Well, if it comes to me, I'll leave a comment below. The other piece I want to close on here is I really and truly do believe if you want, like, you also don't have to want 8 to 10K months. That this isn't what I was going to say, but I think that's the other thing. I think our online space has just over glorified that. I think it's important to talk about for all the reasons we already said, so I won't rehash that. But again, like, I used to make $30,000 per year at my 9 to 5, and that wasn't great for being single living in New York City. But for some of you, depending on where you live, depending on what your setup is with your partner or your spouse, depending on your cost of living, right? That might be a beautiful living. And I think we often equate how much money someone is making to how good they are at what they do. And these are two mutually exclusive things. I know I've had lives around this, and this is what I do want to close on. Being good at what you do in your craft as a coach, as a therapist, as an OBM, as a designer, as a lawyer, whatever it is you do, is very different than how much money you make. The money you make is not a report card for your skill set. The money you make is an energy exchange for the value you're delivering to paying clients, which has a lot to do with your capacity for how many clients you can serve and a lot to do with the business side of things and all of those pieces we're talking about, but also it's going for the capacity you have. Remember, I was charging the client who I helped scale to $1 million. I was a good enough coach to help a client go from 10K months to 115K cash months. She was paying me $100 per session, right? That's not like she thought I was worth $100 per session. That's just what I happened to charge at the time. And so I really think we have to start to separate these things, because the more we're collapsing, money means how good you are at what you do, how good you are, whatever your craft is. The more we're making that the report card, the more we are making it harder to make money, because the money you make it's like that your talent and skill set has only a little bit to do with the money you make. And I know I've done so many lives on this. I equate it to acting all the time, right? Being an actress and landing a big TV show or a movie, you have to have talent, right? That's a prerequisite, but it has this much to do with you landing that job. Everyone here, I know you're good at what you do. That's the prerequisite that we all have, right? But it has this much to do with how much money you're making. And so I really do want to close on that part, just to say, if you want this goal, go after it, have at it. It is absolutely possible. And it is both easy and hard at the same time. It'll feel easeful afterwards. It is simpler than it seems, but I want you to know the right things to focus on so you're not making yourself wrong. If you don't want this goal, or you're not reaching this goal and you do want it, just remember the amount of money you make has nothing to do with how good you are as a human, but also how good you are at your craft. And it's also okay to want to make less if that's what serves you. It is absolutely okay. I know no one on the online space wants to say that. And I think we all win when we actually choose what we actually want, make ourselves right, believe in what we're doing, do the work that lights us up, serve others, right? And leave it at that. Like, that's when we all win. Okay. Hey, Kayla. Nice to see you. Kate says, love this conversation. Thank you for talking so much sense, XO. Love you all so much. Thank you for being here. All right, now me and I feel like I just was like on a soapbox today. I am going to now love y'all and leave you, but I will close and say, if my non-sales pitch here landed for you like it did for Kate and Kayla, first, thank you for I do think this is such an important conversation, so thank you for joining for this conversation. I hope it was valuable for all of you watching the replay as well. If you are looking for support and you're looking for the kind of support who absolutely will champion you and whatever goal you have, I don't care if it's 30K per year or if it's 300K per year or 3 million per year. I have supported clients to all of the above. I think they are all beautiful goals. I do not think one is better than the other. I do not think you are better at one or the other. if you want someone to support you holistically, who's yes got you on the mindset, but does not think mindset is chanting a bunch of affirmations and simply being high vibe all the time, um, I will not go on my soapbox about that, who understands what true mindset work is to help you think like a CEO, help you to get regulated, help you to actually back yourself, and who can help you map out a simple and easeful, we'll say, path to making the revenue you want that works for you, that is sustainable for you. Again, whether that's 30K or 3 million per year. I've got you. I am excellent at what I do. I have an excellent track record. I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back or to be overly, I don't know, bragtastic. I just have been doing this for a long time, and I genuinely have just supported many, many clients to these results and everywhere in between. I would love to connect with you. I would love to support you. Fit is incredibly important for me. So I will drop a link for a free discovery call. And it is free. I've had people tell me that these are worth $1,000 alone. I don't charge for these because they're as much for me as they are for you. I really want to meet with you to see if we're actually a fit, because if we're not, the first who will lovingly tell you, because that's not going to be of service to you, and I will refer you to who I might think is the right person. But I would love to connect with you and see if we are fit to work together and if I can support you. So I will drop a link for that. I have limited availability opening up through the end of the year, so please jump on that if that is something you are interested in. Again, I love y'all, and now I'm going to go have my client calls and enjoy my anniversary with my husband tonight. Bye.